All right, so I'm excited to share with you guys today my forecast for what the 2023 year is going to bring when it comes to overall housing, mortgage rates, state of the market, the whole thing. So I've got some slides I'm going to share with you today so we can kind of give you some insight on why I'm going to be predicting some things. But anyway, let's just get right into it. This is the housing forecast for both interest rates as well as housing coming into the new year. Let's take a look back first at the previous year. So let's talk about what's happened when it comes to overall inflation and mortgage rates. So this is a chart that goes all the way back to 2018, just so we can kind of see, what we're looking at here. As you can see in the blue line, that is the 30-year fixed mortgage rates, and then that orange, red line, whatever you want to call it, is the consumer price index, or the CPI. So I've talked about that in the past, but basically what the CPI does is it measures overall inflation. Starting in kind of July of 2021, we saw inflationary pressures, and the Fed initially thought that it was going to be transitory, that it wasn't going to last. So if you look at this QE period, what that stands for is quantitative easing. So what that means is that the Fed, on top of everything else that they do, they were buying up mortgage bonds. They were buying them like crazy. And so as you can see, during this time frame when they were buying them, mortgage rates stayed relatively the same. But because the inflation was not transitory, after they stopped that, we saw that as inflation rises, mortgage rates went up as well. And so we saw a lot of major increases in interest rates. We were in the 2s and 3s, and they got up in the 6 and 7, sometimes even a little bit higher than 7. I think, at 7.5, 7.9 were some of the highest rates that I was quoting, depending on, certain situations. Basically, that's what it does. Inflation is going to drive those mortgage rates. We've talked about it in the past. So that's what's been happening. When will inflation actually peak? Look back, over the previous year. Now, keep in mind that this is the core consumer price index, which strips out the dwelling and energy part of the CPI report, which means these numbers and percentages are not including cost of housing and gas and utilities and things like that. They're shelter costs, basically, is what they're called. So this is just the inflation numbers when it comes to the price of eggs and milk and all the stuff that we have to buy, going out to restaurants, things like that. As you can see, the numbers have been high over the last year, but they are starting to come down. Now, these are year over year. The most recent data we have is November. So if you look at this November 0.2 ratio compared to November of previous year at 0.5, we can see that they're coming down. We're going to get December's report the first week of January, so I don't quite have that yet. We're in the last couple of days of the year as I'm recording this. This is important data because it shows us kind of an overall pattern on what's happening. So the reason why inflation is coming down is because of the rate hikes that the Fed is doing. It's been a positive thing. I know when we hear rate hikes or rates increasing on the Fed side of things, we tend to think that that affects everything, specifically mortgage rates. I know I got tons of phone calls every time the Fed would increase their rates from clients and prospective clients freaking out about mortgage rates going up. But in all actuality, what it does is this is helping curb inflation, which in turn actually gets mortgage rates to come down. So we saw mortgage rates kind of peak around September. Even in October, they were pretty peaked. The data that we get on this is about a month behind. So October is kind of when we hit our highest interest rates when it comes to mortgages. But they have been slowly coming down. We're no longer in the 7s. We're in the 6s now for the most part. In some cases, we can get down to the 5s with good credit. I think this is going to continue. So it's important to look at this data because especially looking at, June, July, August of last year, and even this year, April, May, June, you can see all of these numbers being higher with the exception of March, where we had a little bit of a dip. So going into next year, this is why I really, really think that around the first half and even mid part of the year of next year, we will see interest rates for mortgages drop. Just based on this data. We'll more than likely expect these numbers to continue to come down. And as these numbers come down, that will in turn bring mortgage rates down. So let's get into those shelter costs. The thing I was telling you about on the previous slide, it didn't show that overall shelter cost. It was just the overall cost of things. The shelter costs are lagging. Again, this report is a little bit behind. The purple is the apartment list rent year over year change. So again, you saw them really peak up. And then the CPI report, which again is delayed when it comes to these shelter costs, it's still higher. So you have to look forward into the future on what this is going to do. Because the report is lagging, we can expect that purple line these are the actual rents. The rents are coming down year over year. And then if you look at the CPI report, it's up. So it's inverted right now. But that blue line's going to come back down and catch back up with that as we get more data. So again, this is all information that is going to show us that it is becoming more affordable to have shelter. Here's another way we can look at it. Here's an important slide. Think about a roller coaster. And this is a perfect scenario right here. You can see that it's on an upward trend, but then it's coming down. So you've got people that are on the top here. The real shelter costs are the guys that are starting to head down already, but because of our CPI report being delayed, it's still showing that it's on the up and up when they're actually coming down. So eventually, as this roller coaster continues to move, then it will all be down and it will all add up and make sense. So that's kind of a good little scenario to kind of show you how that works. All segments are lower except the shelter costs right now because of that lagging data. And keep in mind that shelter makes up 39% of that CPI report when it comes out. So that's a big chunk of those numbers. So I do think inflation is even, on paper, it's a little bit higher than what it actually is because of the lagging data. So prices have come down across the board, right? Food, gas, clothing, all of it is starting to come down. With the pressure of the Fed increasing rates, with there being less money out there, shelter costs, even though they are decelerating, are still showing increases in that CPI report due to the lag effect. So again, this is important information to have and to know. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's take a look at the overall 30-year mortgage rate versus the 10-year Treasury spread. Now, this is a pretty big chart. It goes back 35 years because I want to show you the correlation between the two. For the most part, a normal spread is anywhere between 175 and 200 basis points, which is 1.75% and 2%. So about a 2% difference between the 10-year Treasury note, which is something you can invest in, and mortgage rates. They've always been kind of between that percentage, about 2%. We'll call it 2%. If the 10-year Treasury was at 4%, mortgage rates were at 6%. 3%, mortgage rates were at 5%. So what's happening now is we have a bigger spread. There's about a 300 basis point spread or a 3% difference. Now, why is that? The biggest reason is servicing. So servicing is the people that you pay your mortgage to. And you may think that they are the ones that are holding your mortgage. You close on your house, you get that letter saying, hi, your mortgage has been sold to Chase Bank or Mr. Cooper. What's actually happening is those are just the servicers that are taking care of the payments for your loan. They're making sure that taxes are paid on time. The insurance is being distributed as it needs to be through the escrow account. They don't actually own that mortgage. But what they do get is they get a fee for servicing it. So what's happening is because interest rates rose so quickly, within a very short amount of time, there was a lot of concern. So this devalued mortgages. So servicers had less incentive to buy them. Think about it like this. So if we know mortgage rates are at 7%, but we know that they're going to get lower because, again, we knew this was just kind of a transitory thing where it was not going to happen all the time, where they weren't going to stay at 7%. We knew it was kind of just something that was happening in the moment. That becomes less valuable because someone with a 7% interest rate, if rates drop to 5% the next year, they're going to refinance that thing. So they're not going to hold that mortgage for very long, which means the servicer isn't going to have it for very long, which means they're not going to get the fees that they're used to having. Typically, someone will hang on to their mortgage for 3, 4, 5 years before refinancing or selling or whatever. But at the higher interest rate, again, they become less value. So there's a bigger spread, which causes interest rates to even go higher. So it's just kind of a negative effect there. The spread is going to narrow. Based on the history that we have with interest rates coming down, we're going to get back into a normal territory. The 10-year Treasury spread is higher. Right now, it's right around 4%. Once we get into a normal spread, that is going to drop interest rates as well. So this is all just data. As long as things follow suit and things go the way that I'm anticipating, we're going to get back in within that normal spread, which is automatically going to reduce interest rates. Based on all of this information so far, I do think interest rates are coming down. Based on previous slides, probably, mid to next year. And it's not going to happen in a straight line. Interest rates don't just go from 5 to 3, 7 to 4 overnight. It's an up and down sort of thing. It might go up 0.25% one day, down 0.5% the next day. Like it's going to be a little bit up and down, but the overall trend is going to come down. So now let's talk recession. The recession's coming, if it's not here already. Again, I'm filming this end of 2022, but there are a lot of very, very common factors that have happened in the past, which basically show that we're going to be coming into a recession. So if you look at the previous chart, that little gray line here on top here is the recession. And then on the bottom chart as well, that gray line is a recession. That was the COVID recession. People were using their credit cards like crazy. The recession hit, then they stopped using them, and now we are using them again. So again, once they get to this high level, that is a very strong indicator that we are going to see a recession happen. Credit card usage is up very, very high. Then if you look at personal savings rates during the recession, when everything was shut down, people were saving money. And these two upticks right here you see are the stimulus packages that were received in the 2021. And as you can see, it's been slowly dwindling down. So people have less savings and they're using more credit cards. These are all recessionary factors, big time. This is another very big sign that a recession's coming when the inverted yield curve, so the 10-year curve so basically we have the 10-year Treasury and the 3-year Treasury. So these are, again, things you can invest in. 3 months is smaller than 10 months. So if you subtract the two, that typically gives you a positive number. But what happens is when the 3-month becomes higher than the 10-month, you get an inverted yield curve. So if you look at this line here that's zero, anytime they go below negative, what follows? The gray line is a recession. So we have this solid line on the bottom at zero. Every single time in the past, 20 years, we have seen this inverted yield curve, a recession follows every single time. Early 90s, early 2000s again. 2020. And as you can see, we are very negative on that inverted yield curve. So again, based on this data, a recession is, at this point, it's basically going to happen. All the signs point to it. So now let's look at demand, right? Because at the end of the day, just like we've spoken about in other videos, it all comes down to supply and demand. It comes down to how many people are out there and how many people need houses. That is ultimately what drives prices and everything. So if we look at overall housing demand over the last little bit, these are household formations. Let's say you've got a family of 5 or 6 living under one roof, and then you've got someone who's 20, maybe even close to 30 years of age. They need to move out and get their own place. That is a household formation. So we have more and more households being formed every single day. As of right now, about 1.3 million. It's a little bit lower, but again, we do still have lots of housing formations, which is going to definitely affect the demand. Let's get into the actual supply. The housing starts that have actually been completed is about 1.5 million. And then replaced annually, we have a negative number. So total new supply is actually less than what it was the year before. So supply is dwindling, but household formations are still right around 1.3, which again, if you look at that, we barely have enough supply to keep up with the demand. And again, builders are being very cautious with this because of what happened during 06 and 09 when they were overbuilt. I know I've done previous videos on showing what really caused the crash on top of really shady lending back in the day. It was the very simple supply and demand. There were too many homes and not enough people that wanted to buy them. So as you can see right now, that's not our problem. We have plenty of household formations and barely enough supply to keep up with that demand, which in turn is going to cause prices to increase. Again, maybe not as fast as a pace as we've seen in the last couple of years, but it's definitely going to increase into the new year. So let's look at the home price moderation. I know a lot of people are talking about a crash, a lot of negativity when it comes to that. These are home prices over the past, this goes back to 2013. We've seen a very, very steady increase. This is a good line, right? This is exactly what we want to see when it comes to home appreciation. That gray bar is the recession of 2020 or COVID that happened. And as you can see, then we saw a major spike. Now we are down. It is finally starting to trend down because of how quickly it went up. If we're talking about a crash, we're technically in it right now. But again, it's not crashing down. We're seeing a dip. What's going to happen is if you follow this overall curve, if you look at the line of it and kind of how it's going, it went up and then it's going to come down, but the overall curve is going to stay about the same. You can definitely anticipate that home prices are going to continue to increase. Maybe not at a super fast pace, but they are definitely going to continue to increase even in a recession. So now let's look at affordability, right? Because that's the biggest thing that I hear from everyone. I can't afford a house. Everything's too expensive. The cost of everything increasing. So let's dive into those numbers a little bit, right? Let's look at last year, which is 2021. You've got a loan amount of $400,000. You saw about a 10% appreciation at a great interest rate at 3.5%. Making your mortgage payment around $1,796 a month. The average annual household income, just per the data that we have, was about $9,000 a month. Pretty affordable, right? Now this year, home prices have gone up, so that $400,000 house is now worth $440,000. Your interest rate, again, this is pretty conservative based on what we've seen, a pretty good rate, 6.25%. So, which makes your payment almost $1,000 higher, $913 higher. But according to ADP, we show that wages are also increasing. People that stay in their jobs can expect to receive an increase of around 7.6% of their income. And then people that switch jobs earn about 15% more on average. So if we just average those two numbers out, we'll call it 9%. So that way we can kind of factor in people either staying in their jobs or moving jobs. On average, you'll have about 9% increase in your wages. So that $9,000 a month is now $9,810 a month. But you got to remember, everything else is more expensive. Gas, food, services, going out to eat. If we look to the future, which is the important thing you got to look at. When it comes to mortgages, when it comes to interest rates, they're constantly changing. So let's look into the future. Let's say that next year, we're not going to see a 9% increase in wages. Let's say it's only 5%. We'll be conservative. Brings about another $1,300 a month in income. Well, now, next year, again, we can't expect appreciation to increase a whole lot. So that same sales price of $440,000, now at an interest rate of 5%, or again, in the near future, 5%, that drops that payment down to $2,362. So it's only about $800 more per month. But again, if we have a 5% increase in wages, that's $1,300 more in wages, which is more than enough to cover that $800. So even though it is less affordable now, based on everything that we have going on in the future, we can expect it to be more affordable coming into the new year. So let's look at the actual housing forecast, right? I know I keep saying, homes are going to continue to appreciate, but here's how I came up with that information. So number one, lower inflation. We showed it before. Inflation's coming down. And as inflation comes down, that also brings mortgage rates down. We're more than likely, if we're not already in it, entering into a recession. History also shows us that during recessionary periods, housing has always remained strong. Income is going to continue to increase, which will help that affordability, like we just showed you. There still is not a lot of inventory. There's not a ton of supply out there. We have barely enough homes to keep up with the household formations. And rents are still expensive. They are continuing to rise. So the only other alternative to renting is obviously buying. That means that with all of this information, we can absolutely expect low single-digit appreciation for most of the country with a big pickup in activity, especially as interest rates get lower. So how about mortgage rates? But let's talk about some of the negatives that we have in our way when it comes to mortgage rates, right? Global quantitative tightening. So what the hell does that mean? Basically just means there's less people buying mortgage bonds because they're less valuable right now, which again, supply and demand again, if people buy less of it, they become not worth as much, which causes them to mortgage rates to go higher. Lack of foreign central banks buying. So again, even some of these foreign investors, they are buying less and less of these mortgage-backed securities. And there's a lot of debt out there right now. Credit card debt, and this is not just consumers, this is everybody. There's a lot more debt out there. So these are some of the negative things that we have to combat. But now let's talk about the positives. Lower inflation. Again, mortgage rates follow suits with inflation. As inflation drops, mortgage rates will drop. Now, because of what's happened and because because it's less affordable, because the interest rates were higher, there's less money out there. It caused a little bit of a slowdown in the overall market over the last few months. I mean, anybody that's been shopping or looking at housing in the past few months, we know there's a slowdown. You can go in under asking price. You can get sellers to pay for closing costs. There's not as much demand, which is going to create a little bit more excess inventory coming into the new year. Interest rates get lower. This will also increase that mortgage servicing value, which means more people are going to want to purchasing those mortgage-backed securities for their servicing. And again, as that spread goes back to that 2%, it's going to make more sense. The likelihood of a recession, if we're not already in it, rates 100% of the time. If you go back 30 plus years looking at this data, 100% of the time, rates have dropped during the recession. Think about the most recent one, COVID, right? We saw the all-time lowest mortgage interest rates in the history ever. 30-year fixed rate is going to move near 5% during the first half of next year. And that US 10-year Treasury note is going to go to 3%. So again, we're going to get that yield spread back to that 2%. And so that is my overall prediction when it comes to housing and mortgage. So hopefully this has been helpful. Again, I've got tons of data. If you have anything that you think would be valuable, or if you want to combat any of this, love to hear your thoughts. But again, I do think that we have, based on all the data and everything that I've shared, I think we are going to have a very successful 2023, and it's going to be a fantastic time to buy, with interest rates dropping, with wages increasing, with inflation dropping, still limited inventory, which overall is going to help increase home value. So I don't see home values going down. I don't see interest rates getting much higher. They're going to come down, not in a straight line, but we're slowly going to get there. That is my forecast for the new year, 2023. So again, I think there's going to be a lot of positive thing when it comes to housing. So if you are considering purchasing a home, it is just a fantastic time. And if you need help with that, I'd be happy to help as well. Hopefully you will kill it in 2023 and accomplish all the goals. And I wish you the very best. And if there's anything I can help with to help you meet those goals, please let me know. Have a great day.